Mike Costello. I'm with Howl for Wildlife, and we're going to talk about what I call R4 and R5, relevance and relatability, and that hunting is human. And these are some concepts that we've been developing. I'll be honest, the R4 and R5 idea is not mine. I don't know where I heard it first, otherwise I'd give them credit. But I am adopting it as my own as much as I can because I think it's an important concept that we need to wrap our arms around and really develop and cultivate over the next few years if we're going to protect and even expand hunting as the #1 mechanism for wildlife management conservation in the U.S. and maybe even globally. So Howl for Wildlife is a 501c3 nonprofit. We focus on developing tools for advocacy so that people like yourselves can engage decision makers where and when and how it's most effective. A lot of times people say, contact your electeds. It's like, nobody does that. It's hard, it's cumbersome. And sometimes we don't even know who to contact. Is it a regulation that's in a commission? Is it in a committee that's part of that commission? Is it an issue that's in the Senate and it's, you contact your elected and they're in the finance committee, but this issue's in the natural resources committee. So when you contact your elected, you've wasted time. They don't even know about the issue. And so we've developed tools for advocacy, and we develop language that we believe is more than just saying, you're taking this away from me. We develop language that's values-based, that resonates with the decision makers more than us just being angry. And so that's our secret sauce. Like, that's our superpower, is this action center that really works well in delivering values-based messages to decision makers where and when they're looking at an issue that may affect hunting, conservation, wildlife management, public lands access, all the things that are important to us. Why we do this is because we realized back in around 2021 that the old way of hunters rallying and conservation orgs rallying around rights and privileges and opportunities just wasn't working. We kind of felt like we always lose. We had this sentiment like, oh, we're going to lose again. In California, we had 2 attacks 2 years in a row on bear hunting. And, we sell about 25,000, 30,000 tags in California for bear and harvest 1,000 if we're lucky. So if you look at harvest of bear versus the state population, it's really, who's going to support bear hunting? And when these attacks came up, our founder, Charles, who's in the audience here, he started the first time around with a change.org petition. And to the extent that worked, we got like 25,000 people in about 5 days jumped on this thing. And we realized these people were not all bear hunters. These people were waterfowlers. They were duck hunters and they were deer hunters. And they weren't even all in California. They were from all over the US. People were jumping on this, sending this message. And it woke us up to the idea that we actually have the power to bring our communities together across species, across state lines, across methods of take, and speak together to support each other in all forms of hunting and harvest and pursuit and conservation. And so in doing that, we developed the Howl platform and the tech behind it to do this, to work as an action center that really works differently than most other action centers. I love it because when you send a message on our action center, the recipient doesn't know it came through Howl. Our fingerprint's not on it. It just came from a voter, a constituent. And so they get this really authentic tidal wave of input that they're not sure where it's coming from. And it's pretty magical and works really well, we found. So that's why we're here. Who we are, we're a group of literally myself, Charles, John Sloan is in Arizona, Everett Headley, who's in Montana, does some writing for us, Jared Wire here in Utah, he does some fundraising for us. We're a very small group of people. And with that, I think that we're probably the most effective and efficient advocacy tool or group there is on the landscape. And so we definitely seek and need support because we want to deploy more resources and more messaging. But we're a small group of people working very, very effectively in this space. And we're new, so we don't have government contracts to worry about losing if we offend somebody. We don't have a donor base of sensitive donors that have one specific issue that we can't touch and we can't talk about. We don't have a board of directors to worry about getting anybody offended. So we speak pretty honestly. Sometimes that ruffles feathers, but we like to synthesize messaging that's effective and powerful and new and not what we've been hearing over and over and over. So we think that we need to bring new language to the landscape, and that's what a lot of this presentation here is all about. We work across all states, like I said, 50 states. We work on these issues when they are in front of us as a decision that needs to be made quickly. It's in the Senate committee, we want to get that thing killed, or it's in the House committee, we want to get moved to the whole House floor, or it's in the commission, and we want to get it supported and advocated for. And then the other thing of when we work, we also work with a vision of what can be 5, 10, 20 years from now. The anti-hunting industry, and we'll talk about this, has been working on their incremental slicing away of human participation in ecosystems for decades. And if they just win like 1% this year, they're really happy. We haven't been doing that. And so strategically, we need to start thinking about where can we be if we intentionally do things today? Where can we be 3 and 5 and 10 years from now? And to do that, we have to develop new messaging, and we need to put it in places that we're not putting it right now. Because we need to change minds and hearts and perspectives of people that we don't know and we probably don't spend much time with. So hunting is under attack. Pressured by constant attacks, we often validate our pursuit of adventure and wild harvest with the slogan, hunting is conservation. But even that defensive hunting can be picked apart by the anti-hunting syndicate. We need a foundation of support from all wildlife lovers, especially non-hunters. It is time for hunters to build relevance and relatability with everyone who loves wildlife as much as we do. It's time to lead fearlessly and not make excuses for hunting, but to establish purposeful and sustainable harvest as intrinsically human and ecologically appropriate. Hunting helps wildlife, and hunting is human. These are concepts that the average non-hunter doesn't know and doesn't think about because they're not being told these things. They're being told lies and misrepresentations that really skew their perspective in a way that's against us. Are there anti-hunters? Yes, there are. In fact, there's an entire industry, I believe, that exists to challenge and undermine and take away your rights to hunt and to harvest from the land and to access wild landscapes. They are not the majority, though. Your neighbors don't wake up every morning thinking about how they can take away predator hunting. They don't wake up, sit down, having coffee, thinking about, gosh, I'm really tired of those people going out there and hunting black bears and eating them. That's just not what they're thinking about. They've got 3 kids, 2 dogs, a softball team to coach, 2 jobs, and a mortgage, and they're busy. And what they do think about is they just love critters. They want to go on a hike and see critters. They want to know that the wildlife are okay. They want to know that the ecosystems are healthy, the water's clean, and there's more birds, bees, beavers, bucks, and bears out on the landscape today than there was 10 years ago. That's what they care about. So the anti-hunting industry goes after the low-hanging fruit. We've talked about this a lot. They go after predator hunting. A lot of times people say, why is Howl always focused on predator hunting? Well, the problem is if we're the castle wall, the attack is at the castle wall, and that's predator hunting. That's where the low-hanging fruit is, because this bear is beautiful. That is a beautiful bear. I mean, I would be like, wow. I'd probably start crying if I killed that bear. I mean, I'd do it, but I'd be like, that's an emotional moment to take that bear's life. So they go after very charismatic creatures like this that are beautiful and everybody loves. Hunters love this bear. So we all love this bear, but they take this picture and they'll put up slaughter. They'll say kill sows with cubs. They'll come up with propaganda, rhetoric, and slogans that take this picture out of context in terms of hunting and apply value statements that are not ours, but they'll apply them to us. And they'll go after the low-hanging fruit, which is trapping, which none of us understand very well. But it's highly effective and more precise than any of us know. They go after running hounds to pursue game. They go after predator hunting. They go after the parts of our community where it's the fewest participants, which means it's easy to get us mad at each other and infighting, because we don't understand some of these things. And it's easy for the non-hunter to be quickly aligned within 30 seconds. They see a picture and a slogan like, oh, yeah, ooh, I'm busy today, but I don't like that, so I'm going to vote against it. And then they go back to their coffee and their softball team. So guard the gate. Howl is frequently talking about supporting predator hunting because that's often where the attack is. And collectively, we as a community need to guard the gate. That was coined by Clay Newcomb, I believe, and I love it. So you'll see us using that. But it really goes to not just predator hunting. It goes to using hounds to pursue animals. It goes to trapping. It goes to using dogs to retrieve ducks out of the water. I mean, there's actually initiatives to take that away from us. The idea of using dogs proactively to pull, to retrieve waterfowl. So back decades ago, R3 was created in response to the fact that it looked like the number of hunters was decreasing. And hunters, of course, by tags, licenses, raise money for conservation. And so financially and effectively, functionally, we are important to conservation, the way the system is developed and designed. And if the number of hunters goes down, participation goes down, then our voice goes down, but also our financial impact for the industry that sells us all of our goods and gear, but also the government industry that depends on our money for doing science and doing habitat work and setting aside tracts of land to do conservation, and all those things depend on the number of us who are participating. So Recruit, Retain, Reactivate was created, and it sounded like a really noble concept. Of course, we fought about it, like, I don't need more trucks at the trailhead. Like, I don't need enough. There's already too many hunters. There's too many people doing this. I want to be alone. And most of us want to be alone when we hunt, or in a very small group. And so R3 actually became a point of friction within our community. And I would just say that, yes, as hunters, we should be open to sharing the pursuit, expanding our community. When people want to get involved, we should be open to say, hey, yeah, come on in. I'll help you. I'll coach you. I'll show you. Welcome to the club. And conservation does drive abundance. So if we are funding and fueling that engine of conservation drives abundance. I don't like to say we are conservation. Like, we depend on conservation, and subsequently conservation depends on us. Like, it's truly, conservation could be done a different way. It's not right now, but you got to get a lot of people that don't participate to pay for it, and that's hard to do. So conservation depends on us, and we depend on conservation. And so therefore, having more people doing this, at least maintaining that through R3, is good. But for the topic that we deal with so often right now, as far as legislative, social, political, financial attacks on what we do in terms of hunting, we will never R3 ourselves into a majority position of political, financial, social influence. We won't. And so the question then, because we're only 3 to 5, and maybe in some places a whole 10% of the population, how do we maintain and get cultural appreciation and support for what we want to do, and how we effectively, do good things for critters? Because of what we do and how we give back into conservation, the critters are okay. That non-hunter goal of are the critters okay is happening because of what we do in the system that we participate in. So I think what that is, we'll come back to R4 and R5. Again, I didn't create these. I'm stealing them, and I'm going to own them now. And I want you guys to own them. I want these to be your language too. We don't need to know where this came from ultimately, but we need to understand that if we don't have relevance, if the non-hunter doesn't see the relevance of hunting, regulated hunting, serving their goals, and if we don't have relatable stories or relatable experiences where they can say, I understand that, then we lose support. We lose cultural support for what we want to do. If we're doing something that is relevant to another person's goals and interests, and we have a way to share relatable stories about what we do, we will have their tolerance and we will have their support. And that's what we need. We have to start talking to the non-hunters, as much as we don't like it sometimes. But it can be fun too. What's relevant mean? That's a beautiful giraffe. My wife loves giraffes. We saw a giraffe full mount, floor to ceiling, in a trophy room last year. And she just about started crying. She had to muscle up just to walk into the room. How does some rich guy killing a giraffe help my personal goals of critters being okay? I mean, that's a good question. And this is obviously an extreme example, but it's one that is often plastered on the headlines to skew sentiment against what we do and what hunting is. You could answer, I paid for it, so I get to kill it. Or you could answer, I get it, but the opportunity is severely limited. That's why it's so expensive. And people put great value on this hunting experience for a lot of different reasons. One hunter that kills that giraffe this year will do it for completely different reasons than the next hunter the next year. And none of us know what those reasons are. We don't know what's in that person's heart. The funds generated go to support habitat. They go to support protection from poachers, so the entire ecosystem for giraffes and all the other critters is healthy. The resources harvested and used are enjoyed, valued, and necessary for the local community. If that giraffe can't be, for lack of a better word, I hate it, but sold, harvested for a fee, valued at a high level, so the hunting experience is expensive, that community may not be able to employ wardens to protect this habitat from poachers. That community may not have resources that are generated from the giraffe being hunted, and they will then clear cut their forests and their habitat and do something else with the land to produce resources. Those are just realities. And again, we don't even have to like it. I don't know if I like it, I don't know if I would go do that. But stepping back from what I like, I know that there's a system in place, and take this down to the black bear in California or the mountain lion in Colorado. There's a system in place that ensures that the right number of this critter is in that habitat, and it's being supported by the ecosystem around it. It's being protected by mechanisms, people, rules, so that it gets to live well. And the fee to participate through a license, a small game license, a waterfowl stamp, the fees to participate feed back into that system to support those mechanisms that ensure that this critter lives well and that more live like it. So this is an extreme example, but that mechanism and system works for all the critters that we pursue. And this is where we can have relevance, I believe. The non-hunter just sees a picture and a slogan, and they're like, I don't like that. If they don't know all the other pieces of it, we can't expect them to support and understand that their goals of the critters being okay are supported by this system of regulated hunting that we participate in. So when we say, hey, we pay for conservation, man, that's over their head. It sounds entitled. It sounds like just because we pay for this thing, we get to go do what we want. What we mean to say is, we do something that helps you achieve your goals even if you're not participating. Their goals are being met. The critters are okay because we're doing things and paying into a system that supports their goals. We have the same goals. Relatable. It's the stories you tell and how you tell them. Yeah, I killed another fawn killer. Arr. High fives, chug a beer, bro hugs. I see this about coyotes. I see it about wolves. I see all the predators out there. Too often we're like, I killed. Like, I don't go hunt bear to kill. Yes, I hunt bear because a component of that experience, of that adventure, and that harvest is because we have too many bears in California given the ecosystem that's there. Taking bears off the landscape does support ungulate populations in California. That's a fact. But I don't hunt bears just for that purpose. That's a piece of it. And if I only highlight this, I'm giving a context that a lot of other people aren't going to like. If I say I finally harvested this big old boar after seeing a half a dozen sows and cubs and younger bears I didn't want to kill, it was such an emotional day too. I can't describe it, but wow, it was huge for me. The meat, the hide, the claws, the skull, the relic that I'm going to put up on the wall. It all means so much to me and my family. We're going to have great stories and memories from that hunt. So we can convey this experience in a way that somebody that doesn't do this and sure as heck doesn't understand it might say, okay, there's a deeper context there for that person. And, oh yeah, that trophy, that rug or that skull, gosh, that's how they're going to talk about it with their grandson. When their grandson walks in, there's going to be an entire story about habitat and ecosystems and wildlife that comes from a family member seeing that skull, or a friend or neighbor that comes over. The meat's gone, the Instagram story's gone, and there's that skull, and the neighbor comes over like, whoa, what's going on with that? Let me tell you about that. And then you talk for 30 minutes about something that they'd never had any idea about, other than what HSUS had told them about hunters. So that's a relatable context that we can share that has emotions and stories and connection to everybody, because again, we all love critters and we want them to be okay. So relatability is sharing stories which bridge non-hunters and hunters through experiences and emotions so that more people can feel the way we do, or at least connect with the intrinsically human aspect of hunting. One of the things that clicked with me a couple years ago, and now we're making it part of Howl's campaign and our language here, is that hunting is human. There is not a community on the planet Earth that hasn't hunted. We are all descendants of hunters. The PETA, the president of PETA, descends from hunters. None of us would be here with the body shape, the intellect, the brain power, our existence, if we weren't hunting at some point in our history. And so to say that it's woven into our DNA is an understatement. And I would like to get to a point where we start to recognize that all communities have had hunters, but not all people are hunters, and that's okay. Not everybody's going to hunt, but there's always a hunter in a community. We're driven to it. Hunting can and should, I believe, be recognized as culturally and ecologically good. You know, there's the idea that, oh, the critters were here first. You know, wherever you are, the animals were here first. And there's truth in that, in the sense that, you know, if you've got a subdivision in the valley that, you know, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, there were just elk and critters and there was no subdivision, no roads. So really, whether you're a hunter or not, we all consume because we consume habitat. But there's not a square mile. I don't believe there's a square mile on North America that hasn't felt the human footprint or pressure from humans at some point in time. And so to say that they were here first is really, it's a very charismatic and interesting little soundbite that people like to say when they want to sound a little bit self-righteous about telling you you're doing something wrong. But they too take up habitat. That person's house sits on habitat. So we all take up habitat. But the critters and the humans have evolved together. We've all been here to some degree or another. We've all been here. We've all affected each other's existence. And they are what they are because we've been here, and we are who we are because they've been here as well. So we've evolved together. So I believe, ecologically speaking, the most unnatural state is that we don't participate in nature. Humans leaving a large landscape to not be participants in that landscape is less natural than us being on the landscape and participating in it. Have there been times where humans did bad things? We over-extracted, we over-harvested, we overkilled, we over-predated, whatever you want to call it, trees, streams, rivers, predators? Absolutely. And we should own that. We should say, yeah, that thing that you're talking about, that extinction that we caused, was human-caused, or that extirpation was human-caused. It was a mistake, but we need to allow ourselves, we need to give ourselves the rights to become smarter. We need to reserve room for ourselves to become smarter. And the hunting of today is not the hunting of 1920. You know, market hunting in California to pull bear and deer and elk out of the mountains to feed it to people in San Francisco, that's not happening today. So yeah, there's been instances of overhunting, but the mechanism, the system we have today is not that. So we don't want the weight of that hung around our necks when we're talking about this, and we shouldn't be fearful of it. Relevance. Regulated hunting creates a system with mechanisms and checks and balances that create results which nearly every person agrees with. Colorado, mountain lion, don't hunt mountain lions. The anti-hunting industry said last year through cats, if you keep hunting them at the scale and the pace that you're hunting mountain lions in Colorado, they're going to go extinct. They're going to be gone. And of course, the average person who's non-hunter, who's busy with 3 kids, 2 dogs, 2 jobs, and a softball team to coach, who wants the critters to be okay, is going to say, oh my gosh, they wouldn't tell me that unless it's true. Why would that trusted organization lie to me? So that trusted organization gets a pass on something that's completely untrue. Because actually, through regulated hunting, the goal of the non-hunter, of the critters being okay, happened. Because when mountain lions were made a big game animal in Colorado in the 1960s, there were only about 200 on the landscape. Because we had been overkilling them. We had been over-extracting them. And we changed that. We said, this is a big game animal. This is a special animal. But we're going to use regulated hunting to get a feedback loop, to study it, to know it, to love it, to support it. Not that one animal, but all of them. And lo and behold, 60 years later, through regulated hunting of mountain lions, we have 25 times more than we did in the 1960s. And there's a whole community of people that do hunt them, and they love those animals too. And so that's the relevance. Hunting, regulated hunting, can be a tool. What we do is a tool for those people to have what they want happen. Creates a system, mechanisms, checks and balances that creates results that everybody agrees with. Hunting is a tool for wildlife management. We do fund conservation, supports almost everybody's values, contributes to food security for millions of families. And the critters are okay through this mechanism. What's our personal accountability on this? Who's telling your story? If you've been shamed into not sharing a grip and grin, not sharing your hunting story, hiding off, in the shadows about what you do in your community, or if you're just like me, you solo hunt, you've never hunted with another human being in your life, it's a very personal space for you, and you go do your thing, and you're not doing it to share it with anybody, and you're silent about it. The danger of silence is that somebody else will be telling your story, and they will be sharing your values, and they'll be defining who you are as a hunter. They'll be defining how other people perceive you, people that don't know you, how they perceive you as a hunter. So the danger of silence is that somebody else is going to tell our story, and it's usually not going to be supportive of what we are and who we are. We can amplify positive stories. A story about the mountain lion. We shared that a lot last year. And people are like, whoa, I had no idea. In Colorado, on the street, doing some street advocacy. Hey, can I talk to you about Prop 127? Did you know that 1960s to 2020s, 25x increase, while being hunted every single year, mountain lions grew in population? They're like, I had no idea. I figured they were endangered. I figured there was a problem. I figured there was some situation to solve. So we can amplify positive stories about what the mechanism of hunting and conservation does to meet their goals. We can also just amplify positive stories about what we do beyond that grip and grin. We can share the scouting and the work and the commitment and the effort to learn the habitat, become part of the ecosystem, understand those critters. And then share the other side of the story of the meat, the harvest, what it means, what that relic, what that artifact, that skull means, the memories that it holds for you. So we can amplify positive stories, and the more we do that, the more we build relatability. And I believe, actually, that the shaming of the grip and grin originates with the anti-hunting industry. When we were testifying at the commission in California to fight the HSUS attempt to ban black bear hunting in California, the leader of HSUS at that time literally got up in front of our commission and said, as soon as a hunter takes a picture of that animal, it's a trophy hunt. All other value statements are out the window at that point. They want us to feel a little bit sheepish, shameful in posting up our pictures. They want us to hide our stories like it's bad to put these out. Like, oh, I don't want to be a trophy hunter. And we're going to talk about trophy hunting in a minute. So we need to amplify our stories. We want to know who the audience is. talk about that. Know your audience. When you're sharing your stories or you're arguing on Facebook like I do way too much of, or Instagram, the person that's coming at you about what you do is not your audience. Everybody else reading that thread is the audience. The person that's coming at you about what you do probably is ideologically captured. They are not going to change their mind. But you can talk to them like they're a normal person with kindness and share your story and your perspective and why this is not what they're saying it is. And the people that are reading that thread, like watching a UFC fight, they're taking notes. Who's the jerk? So know your audience. Know your audience when you're posting things. Know your audience when you're engaging with somebody. If you're trying to change somebody's mind, it's fun. Like I get in there, I'll spar. Like I enjoy that. My wife hates it. She's like, who are you fighting with now? Like, I don't know, some jerk on the internet, But, go in with the best of intentions to steer the perspective of the people that are watching that fight, not change the mind of the person you're talking to. Because you're not going to. It's just not going to happen. So, but know your audience. Know that we are all being watched. We're being watched through social media. We're being watched through social media. We're being watched. So just know that and think about it and think strategically. Don't think about that interaction right then. Think about what that interaction can do to change some minds 3 years from now. So think strategically with our language, and we can start to turn the perspective here. Howell's got big goals. I've got big goals. I think we all should have big goals. We need to look at a generational paradigm shift. The anti-hunting industry has been working on this issue, slicing away incrementally, progressively, for decades. They have had a decades-long view of how do they subversively change the language and the landscape of how people perceive hunting. But wait a second. And maybe that's why we were losing. We always feel like we're losing, or we felt like we were losing for so long. But there's nothing that says that we can't do the same thing. There's nothing that says that we can't intentionally and strategically choose to redefine the landscape and the language and the perspectives on hunting. We can do that. We just have to choose to and see what it can be. So hunting is human. I think 5-10 years from now, I would like your average non-hunter family who's busy and just wants the critters to be okay to view sustainable, regulated hunting that we do in the North American model as a human right. That they would never vote to take away our opportunity or their kids' opportunity. A little 5-year-old's going to grow up. They're going to want to go out on some adventures. Maybe that 5-year-old's going to want to be a hunter. That they would never take away another person's right to sustainably harvest abundant critters, abundant species from the landscape, and participate in that process. We wanted to redefine trophy hunting. Trophy hunting, when you look at the picture that the anti-hunting industry shows, is basically poaching. They've taken that word and turned it into something that's ugly, and we're at a point where most of us are like, I don't trophy hunt. I'm not that guy. I'm not that person. That's bad. They've successfully taken something that is the selective harvest of the most unique specimen of a species on a landscape, carefully removing that one. That's trophy hunting. They've taken that and turned it into something ugly. And we want to turn that around. I have a vision where trophy hunting, to the average non-hunter who just wants the critters to be okay, actually says trophy hunting is the most optimal and beneficial form of fueling conservation there is. If you're a trophy hunter and you've got the means to do it, you're putting in for tags and licenses in 7-8 states for 20 years, 30 years. You're paying into a system that is funding conservation for decades, just to have the chance to take one animal off a landscape from an entire state. You're buying 5 mule deer tags, and you're hunting from July until December. Maybe hiring people, maybe supporting an entire economy and communities in the process. to possibly not take any animals off the landscape if they don't meet your goals, whatever your goals are and whatever your soul tells you is the right thing to do. So in its essence, in its most distilled out purity, trophy hunting is you're putting the most into the resource for the longest period of time and taking the least off the landscape. That's beautiful. That's amazing. It'd be great if the average non-hunter thought of it that way, because then it couldn't be used against us. It couldn't be used against our entire community and what we do. So regulated hunting is the most effective and sustainable mechanism for supporting dynamic ecosystems, wildlife abundance, and biodiversity. That's a good thing. But most people, we ride around in Ubers when we go to these shows. What are you guys in town for? Oh, we're at the Hunt Expo. What's that? People that literally are driving circles around here, they have no idea what we're talking about in here. It's like we could be on Mars and they wouldn't know any different. And so we talk about regulations. Yeah, you got to take a class, and then you got to buy a license, and you got to buy tags, and there's only so many tags because there's biologists that are studying that unit, and they're making decisions, they're shifting, adjusting. Every year's a little different. We're never really happy with it, but they're always changing it, with the outcome being hopefully that the critters are better off, and the biodiversity is better, and the wildlife is doing better. And they're like, wow, I had no idea there's so much involved in going up into the mountains to kill an animal. They just had no idea. And so people don't know. So they come to their own conclusions with whatever they've been fed. But these are the goals. These are conceptual goals. They're much bigger and different than just saving one specific hunt for one specific species. They're different than buying a chunk of land to have public access or provide habitat for one critter. And so these are conceptual goals that we need collectively to wrap our minds around and say, I want to be there 5 or 10 years from now. And we can't think about it happening until we say we want to be there. We can't even ask, how do we do it, until we say we want to be there. So that's the challenge today, is we need to have more of us saying, let's go there. The people that have been attacking this, what we do, and hunting and conservation the way they are, they've been working on this for decades. And if we do the same thing, and go back to the idea that nobody wakes up, rolls out of bed, thinking about how they end mountain lion hunting. Very few people do that. We think about looking at OnX and looking at tag draw and the drainage that we're going to hunt. And we're thinking about it. So when we take the energy that we have and the commitment that we have and the passion we have and apply it directionally to where we want to be years from now, we are way more powerful. And our stories are true. We don't have to lie about anything. The data supports our stories, and our stories are relatable when we share them in a certain way that people like to hear, because their goals are being met, because the critters are okay. So if we dare to succeed in this, there will be more public support for hunting. As it says, two bullets down, there will be cultural appreciation. People that don't hunt but want the critters to be okay will know that there's a system that when they see three people going in the backcountry with 7 days worth of gear to hunt mule deer, they'll say, those people are helping make it possible for me to see those bighorn sheep up on those cliffs. They'll understand that those hunters walking off into the backcountry are doing something beneficial for the entire ecosystem that they enjoy, even though they don't hunt. So we'll have more public support for hunting. That means money, that means votes, that means less friction, less things getting in the way of the pursuit that we want. More biologists doing the work. We want biologists on the landscape doing the work, studying and making decisions and learning how to get more critters on the landscape. We want abundance. So more public support. Stronger funding, like I just said, for better management. More habitat. Cultural appreciation. Understand what it is that this whole program does and how their goals are being met by having a strong Department of Natural Resources, a strong Department of Fish and Wildlife making decisions for allocations and habitat and species to take off the landscape. More protection for public lands and habitat, and probably subsequently also more private investment in private habitat. If the private habitat is all cut down, like for that giraffe, it's all cut down to do other things with that resource, then we're going to lose more wildlife. And so just the public lands need to be intact. We want big landscapes for access. We want big landscapes for ecosystems to be intact and thrive. We're part of that equation. And a lasting legacy, not just the lasting legacy so the next generation can go hunt and kill something, but a lasting legacy so there's more wildlife, more biodiversity, really thriving, abundant ecosystems. So a legacy not just for the opportunity, but a legacy of life and wildlife and abundance in that regard. And if we dare to succeed and have all these hunting opportunities come back to us or be supported, maybe trapping comes back in California selectively for certain species in certain places because it has a functional tool for the ecosystem. Maybe things start coming back. Maybe spring bear hunt comes back to Colorado, comes back to Washington, because we can start to steer sentiment. The biologists have been saying, yeah, we need that. The social support will then be there, and these things can come back. It's not just a defensive thing of draw the line in the sand, hold us where we are. It's actually we can proactively bring things back to where we want them to be. And now we're smarter than we were 4 decades ago. We're smarter than we were 3 decades ago, and we can do better with the information we have. So the power of the Howl Pack. I'll jump into my advertisement now. When we all get together, and I like to say Howl and our Howl Pack, which is people that do work on advocacy with us and through us, we've had 50,000 or more people work on issues across about 30 different states when we take action. Obviously, we can deploy more education. A lot of this is messaging. We like to think that we're synthesizing new messages in ways that we're saying things that aren't being said. I think a lot of times it resonates with people like, oh, that makes sense, I like that. And my hope is that we can come up with messaging that resonates with you that you can then carry out and make it your own. Just know, like, hey, if the direction's this way and the strategy is this thing, then you can start synthesizing your own messaging that supports it. But education and advocacy, we need to get the word out. We need to be plugged into more commission meetings and more coalitions. And so the power of the Howl Pack is bringing together people across state lines, all critters, all species of interest, all methods of take. We support running hounds for wildlife. We support trapping. I don't understand trapping nearly enough, but I know enough to know that I don't know enough to be against it. And most non-hunters don't know anything about trapping. They just get a picture of a trap that's probably 60 years old and probably illegal today and probably doesn't represent how trapping actually happens on the landscape. So we need to be more active in guarding the gate for the trappers and identifying maybe there's a functional use there that we should support. Maybe we should understand it before we say we're not going to support you. Same thing with running hounds, predator hunting as well. 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had mule deer and elk hunters and waterfowl. You wouldn't have had waterfowlers in Louisiana supporting the mountain lion issue for us. It just wouldn't have happened. But we're pulling this community together, and as a pack, when we get together, we are strong with numbers. Our other strength here is, as a community, we can change the narrative. We can intentionally start to adopt some of these ideas, reframe the way we're communicating with the non-hunter, and change the narrative positively. The other way that Howl wants to change the narrative, and this is kind of just where we need resources, is we want to be able to place this messaging that's crafted for the non-hunter right in front of them in digestible components, whether it be a billboard or a 30-second reel, so that they can start to see that we're not who the anti-hunting industry paints us as. We need, and this happened in Colorado last year, we need the average consumer of information who's a non-hunter, when they see that ad, that picture and that slogan from Cats Aren't Trophies, or HSUS, or any of them, we need them to say, I think you're lying to me. I know enough about hunting and who does it and how they do it and the outcomes that come from it. I think you're lying to me. I don't trust you anymore. HSUS, I don't trust your message. Wolf reintroduction people, I don't trust your message. Where are you from anyways? Why are you from a $1 billion progressive left NGO in San Francisco? Why do you care about bringing wolves into Colorado? That sounds like just a bunch of division. I don't trust you. And so we need to become the trusted voice to where when these lies and this rhetoric has been spun up against what we do that we know is sustainable and healthy and ecologically appropriate, the non-hunter doesn't trust those people and those messages. That's going to be the biggest effect that we have. We don't need to sue anybody. We don't need to fight in the commission meetings. We don't need to fight in the legislature. If the non-hunter sees conservation and hunting as the same thing and sees what we're doing as helping the critters be okay, then we don't have to worry about attacks. We don't have to spend our time and money on defense all the time back on our heels because we've changed the narrative. And finally, collaborative efforts. There's almost never an action item on the Howl website, and you can get there. It's a good time to multitask right now. Go to howlforwildlife.org. Our collaborative efforts, we always include the local and state stakeholders that are closest to an issue. We want to include, if we can, at least some input from the legislature or the department or the commission on what they need to hear, what the real issue is. Is there really a threat? So that we can bring our action together, and we've got the local RMEF chapter, and we've got the local Mule Deer Foundation chapter, and we've got the local BHA chapter and DU chapter and Delta Waterfowl chapters in alignment, and we're ready to go forward with this action. We deploy it, and it's got value statements baked in, it's got a quick narrative, it's got an easily digestible explanation of the threat, and then boom, we drop it, and people nationwide can participate. Because we are all, wildlife's a public resource. A lot of us hunt out of state or dream about it. And so it's appropriate for me to have an opinion on Oregon's spring bear. I'm in California. It's appropriate for me to talk to the commission in Oregon about spring bear. Because I'm going to go hunt there someday. I pay into that system. I support their system of conservation. And so it's absolutely appropriate for all of us, no matter where we are, what we do, how we participate, to support others. There's also the quid pro quo. If it can be attacked over there for that, it can be attacked here for this. And so we need to be rallying together, and we need to collaborate more. I like to say that while most organizations, it's species, regional method of take, they have guardrails, lanes that they operate in. We have a sandbox, and our sandbox will get as big as it needs to be for everybody to get in and play with us. And so we're always the ones kicking the shins of the other people, like, hey, come work with us. We want to work with you. So that way we can amplify. We can amplify what we do. Social media is a big deal. Most of our messaging goes out through howl_org on Instagram. And we get so much amplification of what we say. Like, we'll put something out, and so many of our followers and our pack amplifies what we say. And then, while we're first just talking, probably just to hunters, now all those hunters that are amplifying that, their whole community, the softball team, the kids, teachers, the dog walker, whatever, now they're seeing that message. So again, collaborating with organizations, collaborating with individuals, and working together on these things really amplifies what we can do. So we do need support. We're membership driven. Sometimes we get some grants, but we're membership driven, $30 membership. It's a half of a box of ammo, I think. We waste that. We waste that in fuel, just driving around town sometimes. And so $30 is our base membership. We've got some premium memberships. If you want to pay, you can pay more, you can get more with different premium memberships that collaborate. American Bear Foundation. You want to support American Bear and Howl? You can join American Bear through Howl with a collaborative membership. So we like to partner with organizations in that way. And so we'd love to have you check that out. If you're not a member yet, go to howlforwildlife.org, test drive the Action Center. We have an action up right now that's completely proactive. There's nothing coming in our face attacking us, but there's opportunities on the landscape this year. Potential delisting of wolves nationwide is in legislation in DC. Future potential Antiquities Act reform, which really affects public land management and kind of overreach sometimes from the executive branch. It really makes states like Utah and Wyoming and Montana angry. So we need to reform the Antiquities Act. We need to reform the Endangered Species Act so it actually functions. Like, let's get them in the act, let's recover them, let's delist them. That's how it should work, right? So there are some things that we want to work on together. So we've got a value statement on our action center that just goes, that captures those issues and those values of public lands and conservation through hunting and harvest. So we'd love to have you take action on that and become part of the pack that way, if not as a member. So that's all I've got for now. I really appreciate you sitting in.